Wednesday, January 18, 2023 at 5 p.m. It's 5:06. It's a little late. Sorry for that. This is today our first DDA meeting. First of all, I want to congratulate all the new members for the board, and thank you for your service. Public service is always very important. I appreciate it in our township, as we know. Before I start, I would like to call for we need to do the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody rise and. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. We're gonna do a roll call. We're gonna call the members. Let me see that.
Why don't you let Brian do it, so you
Yeah.
can see the name tags?
Member Addition, is that how I pronounce your name?
No, it's Madeline Dishon.
Deshawn, okay. Mr. Gittens,
Present.
Mr. Harper,
Miss Harper?
Miss Harper,
Present, okay.
sorry.
Present, okay.
Miss Margraf, is that how you pronounce it? Okay.
Present,
Supervisor Aliaga.
present,
Mr.
Here.
Milzo. Mr. Milzo is not
is
here.
absent.
And Mr. Morocco.
Here.
And Mr. Neiman.
Here.
And Mr. Yankee.
Okay, we have a quorum. Okay, public comments.
No.
Anyone-
We gotta review the
Oh.
agenda.
Sorry, we jumped. We need to review the agenda, okay. And, all right, we see the agenda, we're gonna remove an item of the agenda, which is item number 2, which is swearing in the board members. I believe everybody were sworn in already, so we don't need to talk about that because it's already there. So, I would like to remove that.
Do you need
So
a
I will,
motion?
yeah, I need a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Well, let me make the motion.
You did.
I'm gonna
Oh.
make a motion to amend the agenda, removing item number 2, swearing in of board members, and moving approval of bylaws to the second agenda item, and inserting elect interim board chairman into agenda item number 3.
Now I second it.
Okay, motion have made, and you a second. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right. Okay, the agenda have been approved. So now, public comments. Public comments or for any items, no in the agenda. Any public comment? No? No public comments? Okay, well, I have just a quick comment. I really want to thank all of you from the bottom of my heart. Appreciate you guys being here and serving for the township. It's very important, and we have a lot of goals, and one of them is actually help our community. So I appreciate you guys being here and dedicating your time for the township. Now, let's go to regular business. I would like to, if you don't mind, I would like to every member introduce yourself for the public, and we can start from right to left.
Okay, my name's Madeline Dishon, and I am the owner of Remax Encore in downtown Clarkston.
Great.
I'm Dave Gittens. I am a real estate agent at Brookstone Realtors. I've lived in Independence Township for about 10 years.
My name is Kim Harper. I live in North Crest 2 condominiums, and I've lived there about 22 years. I work for the city of Troy, and I'm the deputy assessor.
I'm Jennifer Fair Margraf, and I'm the executive director of the Clarkston Area Chamber of Commerce.
Great. I'm Jose Aliaga. I'm an Independence Township supervisor, and I live here for 22 years. Yes.
Sam Morocco, I'm a trustee on the township board, been here since '96, and have property, interest on a property on Dixie Highway.
I'm Nate Neiman with Neiman's Family Market. We've been here since 2013, and I've lived in Clarkston, Independence Township for about 8 years.
Eric Yankee, I own Clarkson Glass, and next year will be 20 years. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Moving on. Now I have to present the approval of the bylaws. Do you guys have a chance to look into bylaws? And maybe Mr. Carlisle would like
Yeah,
to say a few
Just
words?
briefly, these are essentially the same bylaws as we have for our Corridor Improvement Authority, which I'll talk about in a minute. We are required to have bylaws by the Enabling Act that we are operating under. You will be recommending Dan, did we decide that this needed to go to the Township Board?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. You'll be recommending approval of these bylaws to the Township Board. They're very simple. They essentially follow what your membership is, how your meetings are to be conducted, which is in accordance with the Open Meetings Act. And one of the things that we don't have in there is absences, so you don't have to be too worried about going to Florida. How, your voting, your eligibility to vote. It's a pretty standard set of bylaws. So we would suggest, if you've had an opportunity to review this, or if you have questions, please feel free to ask them. If you have no questions, we'd ask that we hear a motion and a second for a recommendation of approval to the Township Board. Yes?
I have a couple of questions.
Okay?
I just want to be sure that I'm reading correctly, section 2 on page 4 for election, that when we talk about the officers, that is a one-year term, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then also, when we get to section 1 under Article 5, the fiscal year at all times is the fiscal year of the Charter Township, which is what?
Calendar year.
Calendar. Okay, thank you.
Mhm. And just in that regard, regarding the election of officers, I'm going to recommend to you tonight that you elect the supervisor as your interim chair, and that we'll actually have election of officers at the next meeting, because you're just getting to know each other. So I think it's a good idea that we want to use, this meeting's mostly informational. This is really your only action item. So I do recommend, that's how I recommend we proceed tonight, because we do need to have somebody chair this meeting, and I felt the supervisor is the most logical person to do that.
Mhm. Okay. Any other questions? So then we can make a motion for
Yeah.
the bylaws,
Yes,
Please,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
I was just going to make a motion. I was just going to make a motion that we pass the bylaw approval on to the Township Board for final approval.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, motion has made, it was second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried. Next one is the purpose of the DDA and the,
Well, I'm gonna,
Oh.
we inserted the thing for Jose, so
Right.
I'm gonna make a motion that we elect Supervisor Aliaga as our interim board chairman till future meetings.
I'll second.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay,
Congratulations.
thank you. Okay. So now we're moving on, right?
Sure. Mhm.
Okay, so we are in number 4, purpose
Yep.
of DDA and board responsibilities.
Correct. Well, let me start by introducing, there are some other people here that will be supporting this effort. That's Township Attorney Dan Kelly, and Morgan, I'm gonna blow it, so what's it, and Morgan,
Everyone does. It's Morgan McAtamney.
I'm gonna have to really figure
That's
this
really
out.
cool.
McAtamney from Dan's office,
Okay.
who will be working with us. Brian Ottman, who's the Township Director of Planning and Zoning, and Kim Fagley, who is our superlative excellent, Director of Assessing. I've been working with not just Kim, but all the past assessors on our Corridor Improvement Authority. I'm Dick Carlisle. I've been the township's planning consultant for much longer than anyone here would really like to know, but it's been 41 years, so. So long that I actually wrote the original plan. So, anyway, I want to give it just a brief primer about why you're here, okay? Because why you're here is performing an extremely important job. We provided you with some background materials, and really one of the really best pieces that I think that is around is prepared by the Municipal League. That's this blue sheet that we provided to you. And I would suggest you look through this, okay, and read through it, because it really does, provide, I think, a fairly, extremely comprehensive description of what a downtown development authority really can achieve. You may be aware that we have a corridor improvement authority here in Sasha-Bar Road. So the first question in your mind is, why do we have a downtown development authority along Dixie Highway? Well, the simple answer is in 1985, the corridor improvement authority did not exist. Had it did exist, we probably would have instead have done it. They're very similar, okay? Their purposes are very similar. It's just that for many, many years, communities such as mostly townships that had areas like Dixie Highway, if they wanted to set up an authority, an economic development authority such as a downtown development authority, they had no choice but to establish it as a downtown development authority. We met the criteria, and in 1985, it was established by the Township Board. At that point in time, it was a different circumstance. We were able, and I'm going to speak a little bit later about the whole concept of tax increment financing, but at that point in time, we were able to capture school taxes. So, as you can imagine, obviously the revenues that we were able to generate or to capture in the DDA were substantial. However, to address concerns of the school district, the Township Board set a time limit on the length of the plan at that time, and it was for 10 years. And the reason is because the township, the school district was in what they called in formula back in those days, which meant any money that we captured from the schools was reimbursed by the state. So they didn't lose anything. However, they had this feeling that eventually someday that was going to end. And so consequently, they did not want to have a blank check here because and allow us to continue to capture their taxes if they weren't going to get reimbursed by the state. And as a matter of fact, when the Headley Amendment passed and Proposal A passed, that did end. And so they were no longer in formula in order to be reimbursed. So consequently, that was why there was a 10-year time frame. In 95, there was some discussion of extending the DDA for a couple of years, and the board thought about it and didn't do it. But what happened is the board didn't formally dissolve the DDA, took no steps to put it to rest. A number of years ago, we rediscovered the fact that that was the case. And we have the district in place. We provided you with a map, and it is a legally established downtown district. We don't have an active plan. That's what you're going to be doing in the outset. But the fact of the matter is we do have we sought legal opinion, and because the board never took any steps to dissolve the DDA, it's this many years later, it still exists. So we have an opportunity here. So what is a DDA? Well, there are really basically three types of similar organizations that are allowed by law in Michigan. You have DDAs. I mentioned the CIA, which is a corridor improvement authority, and then you have LDFAs, which are local development finance authorities. All three of these types of mechanisms rely upon, if they choose, what's called tax increment financing. And Kim, you probably are aware of it from Troy. I got two Kims that are a necessity. Anyway, you have our primary mechanism of raising money towards the projects and programs that you wish to implement are through what's called tax increment finance, and I'll get into that a little bit. But actually, the law, which was just 3 years ago recodified, and the DDA law really didn't change, the CIA law didn't change, nor did the LDFA law change. What they did do is actually put it all into one act, I think to make everybody think they did something about it. But they added new, more stringent reporting requirements and transparency requirements where activities needed to be more proactively reported on township websites. You had to have public information meeting twice a year and those kinds of things. And so we will be doing those things as time goes on. But that really was the only change that was made. There really wasn't any other changes made to the law that I can think of that were substantive. Can you, Kim? Yeah. So, but a DDA, along with the CIA, you have broad authority, okay, to promote economic development. You are able to do plans. You are able to establish programs. You are able to buy property. You are able to sell property. You are able to rent property. You are able to to effect improvements that you think will improve the economic climate of the district. The district is, all the frontage of Dixie Highway up into Deer Hill, on M15 right up to the village boundaries, city of the village boundary, excuse me. And in '91, we expanded it down White Lake Road to Andersonville Road. Part of the reason for that expansion was to be able to extend water and sewer down White Lake Road and to relocate White Lake Road to where its current configuration is. If you've been around for a while, you remember that White Lake Road came into Andersonville at an angle, and there was a big hill that was between where the current White Lake Road is and where White Lake Road used to be, and it came in at a very dangerous angle. We always had a lot of traffic problems and accidents there. Well, the DDA was responsible for that relocation, and the money that we raised paid for that. One of the very interesting things about that is that in that hill had to be taken down. That's where Alex's Market is right now. That hill had to be taken down, and their Buckeye Pipeline ran through the middle of that hill. So it was a very complicated project. That pipeline had to be relocated, the hill had to be taken down, and the road relocated. But that's what you have. That's an example of what a DDA could accomplish. There were a number of other public improvements. That's how the street lights went in. That's how some of the streetscaping that hasn't, I would say that probably hasn't been as successful as we would like, has gone in. There were utility improvements done. There was some safety path work done. And there were literally millions of dollars back then of public works improvements that were done as a result of the DDA. You, as a DDA board member, are going to put your mark on the improvement of the development district, that's how we're going to refer to it, by what you identify in a plan of what you're going to do. And it can generally be, public works, bricks and mortar type projects, but it can also be other types of things, other economic development programs, provided the dollars you capture from tax increment financing are devoted to projects in the district. So you can't spend the money outside the district unless, for example, you have a water line that's outside the district that has to be brought in. That's okay. But you can't spend money elsewhere in the township as a result of your tax increment dollars. And so really how tax increment financing works is that once this plan is approved, we establish a base taxable value, okay? And let's just say that's $100 million, okay? That base taxable value remains in taxing jurisdictions that are subject to capture, still get the same taxes that they always would from that base taxable value. The eligible tax jurisdictions are Oakland County, Oakland Community College, HCMA, Township, and now the new transportation village. I think I've estimated this roughly about 14 mils, I think. Does that sound close? Okay. So, how tax increment financing works is that we've established the base value here in 2022, at the end of this year, and we're able to do that if we adopt the plan before May 19th of next year, because that's the date that the state approves our taxable value. I'm not-
This year.
I'm using the right term. 23, yeah. Yeah, May 19th of this year, excuse me. It allows us to go back to 22 to establish the taxable value. And so what happens then, as property values increased, even just by inflation, each year there's an increase in, taxable value in that district. This is what you're capturing. And, over time, just by the rate of inflation and but mostly by improvement of property is how you increase that capture. So one of the things that should be foremost in your mind is stimulating reinvestment in property along Dixie Highway, M15, and White Lake Road, because that is what's going to grow the taxable value. You can see what's happened here. As we've developed new property, as new property develops, that's all new tax base that goes into here. So instead of a rise at like 3%, an inflation rate, it can go like this if you get new investment in new investment. Now, along Dixie Highway and M15 and White Lake Road, it's going to be a lot of redevelopment, reinvestment into existing properties. But I think we can look around and say there's a lot of properties that need to have reinvestment in those properties. So that's the basic concept behind tax increment financing. One of the things I'm going to continually remind you of is that you are never going to raise all the revenue that you need for the projects that you identify in the plan. But that's not a reason not to put those projects in your plan. Because what the TIF revenues allow you to do, it allows you to leverage other funding, okay? And in the CIA, we got money from the Road Commission, from MDOT, from private parties, all because we were able to seed that with our TIF revenues. So for a modest investment on the part of the CIA, we generated millions of dollars of investment from other parties into the projects that we did. You're going to have even perhaps a greater opportunity to do that with the DDA because of its condition and because of transportation funds, other economic development funds, other sources of funding that are available for areas that are more aged and need more reinvestment than an area like Sashabad Road, which was essentially it had a lot of greenfield, in it. That area will have a lot of opportunities, I think, to pursue other sources of funding to match your TIF funding. So that's how I really advise communities that this is how you have to think of this, that you're capturing these dollars really to leverage more dollars, okay? And so, as we look into the kinds of things that stimulate reinvestment, those are the things that are going to be most productive for your DDA to be able to grow. There's no term on the DDA as it's now been passed by the township board. There's no ending to it. It may well end because you may run out of things to do in your plan. And that happens, you know. I don't, you know, I won't be here. I can guarantee you, I mean, probably, if I am, they'll be wheeling me in. But the fact is that at some point in time, you'll realize that you've achieved your mark. Because, you know, the other part about this is you're capturing township taxes too. You know, I mean, township, everybody's going to still get the taxes that they're getting right now. But you know, this increment, approximately 50% comes from township taxes. And so you have to be sort of strategic about, you know, how you do this and how long you do this, because, you know, again, at some point in time, you'll want those dollars to come back to the township and also to the other taxing jurisdictions. Let's talk a little bit about the plan. Is there any questions about that so far, what I've said?
I have one.
Yeah.
You got one?
Yeah, I do.
Go ahead. No, you're good.
So the money, initially, the DDA got the money captured from the schools, and that was reimbursed by the states.
Correct.
Is there anything that we're capturing here that's going to be reimbursed by the states?
No.
Okay.
Dick, what is the mechanism that to use to go after matching funds? Like, who in the township is our resource that would even know, you know, how to proceed in capturing funds or grants or contributions from, you know, government agencies? Because it's not going to probably be.
Well, sometimes it's us, and frequently it's your township engineers who, you know, pursue a lot of transportation funds. I believe right now, DPW is pursuing or has received a transportation grant to do some safety path improvement work along Dixie Highway. There's a lot of transportation money. I mean, a lot of transportation money for non-motorized and for motorized improvements, for safety improvements. That's where the big dollars really are. So, you know, there's a whole host of things. Generally, between our office and your township engineer's office, we are knowledgeable about the types of grants that are available. But, you know, many communities do pursue and bring their own person in to do that kind of stuff, which is great if you can do that, to just basically pursue, you know, and be knowledgeable and pursue that grant. So you don't have to be totally dependent upon your consultants, but your consultants have that expertise.
Right, but
And the other thing, Sam, too, you're all involved, you know, as elected officials, you're involved in municipal associations. You talk to other township officials, you know, and find out what the things are that they're doing. And that's where you start to learn these things through your associations, in your township association and various other municipal associations, municipal league, but you learn about the grants that are available. But yeah, it's, you know, and it's a competitive process, but you have to you know, you have to be aggressive in the pursuit of it.
And this board controls the funds, right?
Correct.
And with those funds, that's how you would be paid and the engineers get paid, and if we needed somebody to go after money and we wanted to pay them, they would be out of our budget, right? So we're completely self-sufficient, and we use our TIF money to pay for
Correct.
everything that's involved, separately from the township.
Now,
right?
yes, you are subject to submitting a budget. Your budget does have to be approved by the township board. Okay, so we will be putting together a budget eventually here. We obviously have no money yet because we haven't captured any money. We haven't implemented the tax increment plan. So the township board is advancing money to allow this effort to continue. That money will have to be paid back. But that's exactly what the CIA board has done. And even to the point that when the 5-lane expansion north of North Shashabaw was done, and there was you know, still improvements to be done with Walden and the intersection, the township board went ahead and borrowed, you know, floated a bond against the tax increment revenues, and the CIA is right now in the process of paying the township board back out of TIF revenues. Interesting point with the CIA is that in all likelihood, that bond term was supposed to be termed out by 2029. It's probably going to be paid off early because of the revenues that have been generated. So we're projecting 26 or 27. So that, Sam, is a possibility, but I don't recommend that now until you really start figuring out what it is you really need to do and what the revenues are going to be. Go ahead, Kim.
I believe Jose is also in the process of hiring a professional grant writer to be a part-time to assist with obtaining funds.
Yes, that's correct. I'm looking to, but right now we are in the process to get someone that's going to be working for us for grants. So we are in the process right now. I spoke with Congresswoman Lisa McLean, and then I already met one of her staffers that's going to help us to identify some grants. And also I spoke with Mike Harris, or his state representative from the state of Michigan, to see some other, other ways to find money as well. And I will meet with CENCOP too. I don't know if they can help us as well.
We have met with them and they can.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely, especially in the transportation funding area.
Yeah, right now we're working with Dave McGee, director of DPW, to get some grants at this point. But yeah, I mean, I already started the communications with the federal level, state level, and CENCOP. So hopefully, yeah.
So none of this can happen unless you have a plan. And the law requires that you put together a DDA plan, which in essence has two components. It's a development plan and it's your tax increment finance plan. When you get your first draft of this plan from me, you're going to see there's a lot of really boilerplate stuff in there, but that's what the law requires. There's really going to, and I will demonstrate to you or point out to you the sections that you really need to hone in on. But really, just briefly, what the development plan does is sort of establish the background information behind the district, the development district that I just described to you a few moments ago. But it also describes the development plan is where you identify the projects and programs that you wish to pursue. And you'll see those, I will present those to you in more or less like a tabular form with a description. Be up to you what you want to do. But in that we identify, we briefly describe the project, we try to describe a time frame, although, that's really hard to do because we just don't, there's a lot of things we're not going to know at this point. And we identify a cost. And then we also, in another portion, we identify potential funding sources. And you'll see that table from me, you'll see that I identify more than just TIF funding for potential sources, because I want to give you that. The way I want to give this to you is with enough flexibility that as things change over time, you're not having to amend the plan because circumstances have changed. So you're going to see that the descriptions are relatively general, the projects are relatively general. We do have some specific public works things that we're recommending, like completing our safety pass system, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that particular area, and I will get into that later when we start talking about the plan, not today. There is some utility improvements, but there's also some other things that you can consider doing. Sam's worked for years on trying to get gateway signage into the township. You don't know when you come into this township from your neighboring boundaries. Wayfinding is something that many DDAs have done to try to direct people in a more effective manner into places where you want them to go. You can spend the money on a branding program. It's perfectly legitimate. So there's a wide flexibility there. You obviously have to be conscious of cost, but the cost estimates that I put in there right now are basically, I'm guesstimating because I don't know what they're going to be. You don't know what they're going to be, and over time they're going to change. The costs we originally started out with the CIA. We were going to rebuild the entire basically rebuild the entire interchange and replace the bridge. Well, we realized that we were never going to generate, it was a $29 million project. Realized that that was never going to happen with the TIF revenues that we were generating. So we scaled it back. You're going to, eventually, you will find certain things that will be the case too as you go on. But you'll have the flexibility. We also, if we have to, down the road, you can always amend the plan, okay? You can do that, and it does not jeopardize these taxing jurisdictions. The ability of these taxing jurisdictions to drop out. The only thing that jeopardizes that is if you expand the district. So if you decide to expand the district up to I-75, for example, along Dixie Highway, that triggers the opportunity for these taxing jurisdictions to drop out, but just of that expansion. They can't drop out of the district, okay? So, but, you know, those are things that we'll all learn and discuss as time goes on. And then the tax increment finance plan is simply, it's again, you know, it really is 90% boilerplate, but the most important thing about that will be the projections that Kim's office will be preparing of what we can, you know, reasonably consider to be the tax capture from the district. And what happens with that is that we change that, we redo that every year, because the rate of inflation increase that the township, that changes every year. You know, the development that occurs changes every year. So that will be updated every year to reflect the new conditions. But we start with this to give us the best guess we can at the outset of the plan, when you adopt that plan, that these are the TIF revenues that you'll be able to expect. Questions?
The tax capture, is there a time frame that we have to spend that in? Like if you, within that year, or?
No, in fact, it's really hard for you to do it. In fact, you'll probably, you won't want to spend all that money in 1 year, because you're going to want to start accumulating some dollars for larger projects. And this is exactly what we did with the previous DDA, and it's what we've done with the CIAs. We needed to accumulate dollars, and you know, we came under a little criticism for not doing anything for a few years, but you know, we were trying to be conservative and not spending the money until we had a sufficient amount to actually do the project. So that's, you know, we can only, I mean, you know, the only alternative to that is to borrow against it. And at this point, I wouldn't be recommending that to the township board, because they would be the ones having to make the decision. But ultimately, you may be able to do that. But no, you don't have to spend them all. You will have to spend money on administrative expenses, and that'll be in the budget, so that will be coming out of the tax revenues. But my guess is that very little will be done this year, and probably not a lot done next year in terms of projects, except you may start with something that is more of a soft cost project like branding or something like that. That'll be up to you, you know.
A question.
Yeah.
So, and this might come, I don't know if this is for you. We have a lot of property on Dixie that's vacant right now, or that is not necessarily up for sale, but probably will be redevelopment, you know. At which point, so if we're gonna freeze taxes at 2022, let's say the old KSI building sells, just as an example. At which point do we capture, so say it's before we finish our plan, it sells and the tax base goes from the last owner that owned it 30 years ago to the new owner, that's going to be a major increase. If it's prior to us finalizing the plan, you know, does that get locked in the old way? Like, at which point does that trigger? And then the second part of the question, if they buy it, changes hands, the tax for the the unimproved property is gonna be one thing. Then when they finally make the improvement, that's gonna be another thing that's going to raise the tax base, you know? How does the timing work on those captures, since there's people looking at buildings that, you know, in the township right now?
2022 will be our, what we call our base year. Anything that sells in 22 and comes uncapped in 23, you will be capturing that. All building permits, remodels, additions, anything that improves the property value that we can consider new and additions will also increase your base for 23.
Okay, so if something happens next month and we're still doing this, we're still good. So,
You're
right,
good.
we're
Yeah.
locked in.
That's
Well, that's a big deal, because some of these, you know.
Sam, you're good if you get the plan adopted in May, by May.
Right.
We have to do that. That's
Yeah.
got to be the end goal, or you're going to be on to the next tax year.
And
Okay.
we're pushing for that because we have the highest CPI for taxable value in the history of Proposal A for 23, so that's 5% right out of the gate that you will be capturing.
I'm just wondering, after reading through the history of all of this, the last DDA had decided to end but didn't dissolve it. And I do see that the TIF was returned. Was all of the TIF money returned, or is there still funding available from the last time?
No, there wasn't. There, most of that money was actually spent on completing the projects that had already been started. So even though, and that could occur, I mean, you could end, but you might still have projects that need to be completed.
Of course.
So, yeah, no, there really wasn't a lot of, at that end, we had, by the time we got done relocating White Lake Road and all that project, there was only, I think, a couple $100,000 in TIF money left at that point in time. Yeah, Kim?
So in the district, Kim, do you know the ratio between the residential versus the commercial or industrial within the district that we'll be dealing with?
We only have about less than 30 industrial parcels, so that's minimal there on White Lake Road. Residential, we have North Crest, Lancaster Apartments, which is actually commercial. And then parts of Stoneman on White Lake Road, that's predominantly most of it. There's a few little houses mixed in along the Dixie Highway corridors.
So we're basically going to be dealing with the commercial market for our values.
Yeah, probably. Mhm. And Kim, you brought up a good point here. Because we have, you live in the district, because we have more than 100 residents in the district, as part of this process, and this is what's given the supervisor and Mr. Morocco kind of fits, but we have to have a citizens advisory committee during this process. The law requires that we establish a citizen advisory committee to advise you about the elements of the plan. So I think we have decided, and really it'll be, you can weigh in on this, but we thought the most efficient way to complete this is to have Citizen Advisory Committee members join and have a joint, our next two meetings to be joint. I mean, they're your meetings, but the CAC will have to be here to be able to advise you about the elements of the plan. It's going to be cumbersome, but with this compressed time frame, it seemed like it was the only way possible to do this. So you do have a 9-member board now?
As far as, yeah, I think we actually have
Yeah.
10 people that we have
Okay.
to choose from.
Okay.
That
Great.
signed up, that we're all verified, right, Brian? I mean, we're good.
Yeah, it's gonna be the next board meeting for approval.
Tuesday.
Yeah, this Tuesday.
So
yeah.
Tuesday, we're gonna pick the advisory committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think what I've done here is I've provided you, that's the chronology.
And they all know, Dick, about the 8th and the 15th of February and the 8th of March are the two critical meetings
Right.
that they're going to participate with us in,
Correct.
those next two meetings.
Yeah, so please spend some time looking at this schedule, because you'll see, this will be, these next 3 months will be the busiest time for you as a board for some time, I believe. I think once we get the plan approved, we'll talk about this, but I can't imagine the board meeting more than, I'm not sure you'll meet once a month, you know, that, it'll be up to you. It depends on what you want to do. But you will not have, once you get done with this plan, then you're going to go on to some kind of regular schedule, whether you decide to meet once a month or once every 2 months. You'll make that decision, okay? Depending on what you want to do. But what I'm saying is, this is the most intensive period because we have this deadline that we have to meet. And we're sorry for that, but it's just kind of the way things worked out, you know? You know, we had an election, we had all kinds of stuff going on, and it delayed some processes that we were trying to, you know, push this forward, so. Any questions? I think when you start to see the plan itself, and you will very shortly be sent a draft of the plan, the board was good in responding to a request that I made to give me an opportunity to get started on it, because if I had not, we would never have gotten this done. So, again, as I said, most of the 90% of it would be stuff that it really is, you know, I would want you to read it, but it's not stuff that's, it's just basic background information. You know, about 5 to 10% of it is the real substantive stuff, and that's the programs and projects, timeframes, and then the tax increment financing plan. Those are the things that I will ask you to concentrate in, because if I don't get that input back and it's not what you want, then the plan won't be, you know, it won't be effective, it won't be what you want. The other thing that we have to do, and that is to make a decision, and this is really, we need the township board's input on that, and this will be something that we will work through with the supervisor and Mr. Morocco, since he is on the board, is the actual amount or percent that you wish to capture. You can capture up to 100% of the increment if you want. In other words, you can capture that entire 14 mills for the increase that you are permitted to do that. The CIA board captures 50%. It's a strategic decision. We'll know more when Kim is able to do some projections for us about what the various levels will generate in terms of TIF revenue. The reason I say it's a strategic decision, because the township board also has to decide, well, you know, we're taking 50% of our revenue for police and fire service, you know, out of our revenue stream and putting it into the TIF. So that's why board has to be aware of what the implications of that are.
What's the percentage of, like, how much do we expect to capture from those other entities in percentage, you know?
It's mostly, it's about, I'm gonna say 55-45, 55% township, 45 other taxing jurisdictions. The county is the other big enchilada from that standpoint.
So if we start reducing our capture, we're really minimizing what we're getting from those other
You are.
entities, I mean, down to,
Yes, you are.
okay.
Because we don't have large projects on the planning, in the planning phase, like a Monarch Grove or Starbucks or those types of things, you're dealing with much smaller numbers in this DDA district. And the amount that the township and the county would lose by going to 100% capture is pretty nominal in the big picture. So you'll have all those numbers to review and consider. But going to 100% capture in a district this size and this age is not going to break anybody's bank.
No.
It's gonna give us
again,
more options.
You can, you know, we'll want to present you with the options, and again, keep in mind that the plan can always be amended down the road. You know, I mean, it is a bit of an expense, but you can, you know, if you find out and the board would like you to, you know, consider that, you know, that's always a possibility. Yes, Kim?
Going to that amendment, can it be raised and lowered, or just raised as far as that percentage?
Both. Yep. Yeah, you are, believe me, you are past the most critical, you know, the most critical thing that would jeopardize this district was done in 1985. And that's when the district was established. Today, if you were starting this from scratch, the taxing jurisdictions would have the ability to opt out at the time that you form the district. So you're beyond that stage. So you have a really incredible opportunity here to invest back in Dixie Highway, you know, that other communities, you know, don't have. So. Anybody miss anything, Dan?
Oh, sounds good.
Okay. So I think that's
Excited.
that's the background. And, you know, if questions come up, please let us know. You will be receiving a draft plan, and so we're gonna, you know, we'll be plunging right in to what it is that you want to do with this district. Again, keep in mind, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. You know, I think some jurisdictions that I work with, you know, think that they're going to see immediate results as you know, as part of this, and you're not. You know, you have to start generating these revenues over time. But it doesn't mean you can't do anything. You know, and the mere fact that you're doing this can be an economic stimulus in and of itself. The mere fact that you exist can demonstrate to outside investors that this is a worthwhile place to invest because this community's got plans for this area. So.
Like that.
Huh? Okay. All right.
Right. So we're gonna move to the plan organizations, right?
Pardon me?
We're moving on to number 5.
Yeah.
We don't need to approve anything here, just.
No,
was a
you're good. No, I
presentation.
already did that. I'm sorry.
Right. You already plan organization, right?
Yeah, I did.
Yes,
I
what I was
blew
thinking,
kind of
yeah,
right
this
through
way.
that.
So when should we expect to
next
see
steps, too.
when should we expect to see a plan to review? We'll have time to review it before our next meeting, right?
I will say you will probably have that first part of next week.
And would the CAC have it in advance for review prior
Yes,
to the
they
meeting
will have
also?
to, yes.
Okay.
Okay, the CAC, okay.
And I will put together a descriptive cover memo for it, just to sort of highlight, you know, and I'm not going to discourage you from looking at the entire plan. I want you to do that. But I also know that there are some parts of it that are the most important parts. So,
Okay.
I already dropped the keyboard here.
Okay, we already covered the next step, I guess, so
I think we're
we're
good.
gonna approve the minutes.
Not
But we
bad.
already have a minutes, yeah.
You don't have any minutes.
Yeah,
You will
so
next month.
Next one, yeah. I guess we have a discussion.
How are we gonna have the CAC here with us and us here, and are they, how are we gonna set up? Are we
I
gonna do
think-
like a
I think
round
maybe
table
we'll
setup, or?
We'll try to set up some, around, you know, some tables right here so the CAC can sit here and we'll still have to have our other members down here on the floor because we don't have a 9. You know, we used to have a 9-person planning commission, Sam, you know.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, yeah,
Huh.
in the old days.
Well, and then do they get sworn in too, the CAC? They do, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the CAC already exists? Those
Well,
people are?
they've been recruiting people for it.
Okay, so how many people are on that?
9.
9 also.
We have
10.
10 residents that have agreed to participate.
Okay,
The township sent letters out to all the residents that had mailing addresses in the
Okay.
district.
Yep.
I don't think it was all the apartments, because we did it by parcel number? But we did get, you know, reach out to a bunch of people. We got 10 to agree. I believe they got 10 signed up with applications. On Tuesday's meeting, it'll be on the township board's agenda with the 10 persons' names somebody on the township board will have to make a motion for 9 of those members to be appointed. And then once they will, then they'll contact them, get them sworn in, and they'll be part of our group.
Okay.
Yeah, they can.
I think you have to have at least 9. If you want to appoint all 10, you can.
That's what that was one of my calls I had to you.
Yeah, oh, sorry. Yes, you can, I mean, it has to be at least 9, but if you want more than 9, you can.
Okay, but so if it's a process of voting, I mean, no, have to be, I mean, 10 is okay, I mean.
Well, they're gonna, yes, they have to, let's say, when we finally get down to the point where you're ready to vote on the plan, they do vote. But they're voting to advise you. You can still vote your own, I mean, they say, turn that plan down. You still have the final vote to recommend it to the township board. It's ultimately the township board that has to make this decision, and that's, they have to have a public hearing.
We're gonna tie
And then
this
they
favor,
adopt the
so then
plan.
you have to make another motion.
So anybody that's disgruntled about it can come to the public hearing and also express their point, you know. But, you know, and then, you'll have to think about how you want to use the CAC in the future, because the law is not all that specific about what the only, I mean, the basic purpose of it is to advise you about the plan. But, if you have 10 interested people, you might think in the future about how you can periodically involve them in some of the decisions that you're making. That's up to you.
That's kind of how I presented it to a lot of them too.
And I think I think if you were to do that, that would be smart, because you want to get buy-in for some of these things that you're doing. I mean, let's say, just for example, you start a branding, you want to do a brand, I mean, I'm just making this up, but, a lot of DDAs and stuff are doing that. You want to do brand it, or you want some input on your signage or your gateway signage. That's a good group to have around.
So, and just so this board knows, the township board is actively seeking branding for the township itself, because we have several logos with bells and not bells and all this, and everyone's very anxious to, and also a tagline that would go with the community, which we don't currently have. So that's separate than our district. So, the Dixie Highway could be a different, have a corridor name or something, but with the township itself as a whole is anxiously and actively pursuing a new brand, so we can start printing logos and literature and shirts. And like everyone's on hold waiting to find out what our new logo is going to be. So that is also actively being discussed.
Okay.
Yes, hopefully it's coming very soon. I talked to Derek Smith, he's the director of Parks and Rec, and then very soon he's gonna start the process, so hopefully we're gonna get something soon. Yeah, it's true, we have so many logos. This is one of them. This one, and then you have the one in the website, if you look at it right here. This is another one, so it's true, but hopefully I'm very confident this year we're gonna have a very nice logo, nice branding for us, for sure.
I think I have to say, I think you're embarking on a very exciting opportunity here. I really do. Having been here for 40 years, and having gone through the first round and then seeing the success of the CIA and then seeing all the things that have happened in this community, this is a golden opportunity. Dixie Highway suffered a lot from economic downturn, and particularly the last recession. So I think there's no place it can go but up. And the other part about this is some of the stuff that we have planned in the past, we've implemented. We have adopted some more creative ordinances so that it facilitates redevelopment. We've done a brownfield project where the Crispellis is, so there'll be issues, times when you will have contaminated properties. You're going to find that you'll need to use the Brownfield Development Authority through Oakland County. This is what this body is all about, is putting pieces together, okay? It's not just a single uniform thing that you do. It's really creatively putting a variety of pieces together to create a larger and a better whole, so.
Any other comments? No?
Dick, does everything go through the township board at the end?
Pardon me?
Does this board have are we a recommending body to the township board, or are we the decision makers for the DDA?
Once you have a budget, you are the decision makers.
Okay.
Yeah, once you adopt a budget, if you spend in accordance with the budget, unless you're going to ask the township board for participation, you can make your own decisions.
Okay.
Any legal comment then? No?
Basically, when you do bonding,
Yeah,
you approve the plan and the finance plan, which kind of dictates what you have the authority to do, which is what Dick said. When you do things like bonding, then you come back to the board if you need the full faith and credit of the township,
when we do banding.
when you do bonding.
Okay.
If you decide to do that.
All right.
Which is a couple of years down the road.
Okay. Any other comment? No? Brian, everything okay? Any comment? Okay. Okay. For you guys that don't know, Brian is is a director of planning and zoning. All right.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. You're adjourned. Thanks.
All right. Good first meeting.